I know, you told me about that.
He was there.
Sure, why not? Be comfortable. Move the chair wherever you want. Let's move this one out. Miss King, and she's the daughter of Gladys Stochl Smith, and she'll tell us about the story and into preparing for today. But Judy will surely enjoy it. So thank you for coming and representing your mother, who is just not well enough to come today. But Gladys is usually at our meetings, and she's always a supporter. So I'm glad that Judy, who's now our program chairman, has been for a while, took over. So thank you, Judy, for coming.
And I'm happy to do it. Mom wished she could come too, but she had a sciatica attack and she's kind of laid up. So I'm happy to be here for her. My grandmother and grandfather, $1,500, which they borrowed from Mr. Fiala's father. They had two children, William Stochl, who was born in 1907, and a daughter, Gladys, who's my mom, born in 1915. From 1906 to 1918, my grandfather, had a bicycle and a confectionery business in the house on Church Street, and he operated this for 10 years and was also appointed to a part-time position as auditor for Islip Town, which he held for about 2 years. In 1918, he gave up the business of bicycles and confectionery and entered public service on a full-time basis as clerk and timekeeper for the Islip Town Highway Department. In 1933, around that time, he transferred to Riverhead to become the guard at the county jail, and later to become ward the following year. At around that same time, he opened a butcher shop in what is now O'Grady's for my uncle. And my uncle worked that business for a couple of years, and then it was closed, or Mom said she thinks a couple of years before it was sold to Henry Schultz, who operated it for many years, and now it's O'Grady. My grandfather was a Republican committeeman for 36 years. He helped to organize the Theodore Roosevelt Republican Club, in which he also served as an executive member, and helped organize the Women's Auxiliary of the club, and also helped organize the Bohemia Fire Department, and served as chairman of the Board of Fire Commissioners for about 10 years. He retired from jail warden January 28, 1946. He was the warden for 12 years. There's pictures of him here, too. Some of you came in just now of him in that position. My uncle Bill Stochl married Anna Johanna Vondrasek. And Anna was from Astoria. She married my uncle when she was 19 years old. They had one daughter, Jacqueline, who married Reverend John Keith Lawton. And after they were married, they lived in Virginia for a short time, and most of their married life has been in Anchorage, Point Hope, Alaska, or Anchorage, Alaska. That's where she is now. My mom married Fred Smith from Patchogue. He was one of the wild Patchogue boys. My mother worked at the lace mill, where a lot of the girls worked were local girls. And my father followed her home one day, and when my grandparents found out he was from Patchogue, they weren't so sure they were happy. Because Patchogue was like the city, and any boy that was from Patchogue was like a wild guy. So. I have a brother, Fred, who he married Diane Paquette from Forum. They have two daughters, Leanne and Kelly. And Fred, after he married Diane, lived in Dallas, Texas for 25 years. He was in the Navy before that. He liked Dallas, and then after he was married, they moved there. Now he lives in Miller Lake. He's retired. He's apartment. And they moved back to the island so they could be close to their family. Her family is all here on the island. Yeah, I could retire this year, but I'm not really ready yet. I teach first grade and I enjoy it a lot. And I think I'll know when I'm ready, but I still have the energy.
You'll get too bored.
What's that?
You'll get too bored.
I would be, yeah. Well, I'm the worry. I do the worrying in the family. Somebody has to worry for every family, you know. I'm the one who worries.
Yeah.
So I'm okay in July when I'm home, but by August I start to worry. So I'll be better off at work. Come up and look at the pictures.
Okay, if you'd like to go and look at some of the pictures, and then if you have any questions, Judy can give you the answers
We lost
to
the
all
picture
that.
over here.
She did her homework. I'm
You look at after, you can come some through, but she'll go and show you page by page. So welcome, Justine, and I'm so happy that you're here. Justine went in the house to look at the piano, at the Lily Bartenek piano, and she maybe will tell you a little bit about coming to the Bartenek house before she starts on the Haselbaur.
Well, I used to come to Lily's house, but that is not the piano. The piano was an upright with a lot of fretwork, and the material behind it, I think they had cretonne material behind it. And Lily would play for us, and I can remember one in particular. She got the new sheet music every week, and one was Swinging in the Hammock. And she would play with the one hand, no, this hand she would play with, and her mother would say, 2 hands, Lily. But we were happy with just the tune anyhow. Well, I'm going to tell you about my family, and we did a lot of research on it. This particular part of the family, we were able to go back to 1741. And it's the 2 great-grandparents who were Lydia and Anton Verkowski, and their 3 daughters, Anna, Antonia, and Justine. Okay, they arrived in this country during the last century, bringing with them this photo of their hometown, Guzman. And this area here, it is situated, this is Prague, and this is Pilsen. And up in this area are the mineral springs and the health bars, Solovy Squashy. And in a little town, this is just an aside, in a little town near there in Yakubov, from this area, at the end of the last century, a huge 2-ton block of pitch blende or uranium wood mine. Marie and Pierre Curie isolated radium from it, and they won the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1903. Hops grew abundantly in this area, and of course Pilsen was a big brewery center. As a matter of fact, I just got a little printout from one of the Czech organizations that I belong to in the Middle West, and they said that in 1995 there were in the new Czech Republic 900 breweries. So that's quite a record. In 1855, my great-grandparents were wed in a civil ceremony in Zell, Austria, where Anton was stationed after being forced into the military service. He took part in the 1859 Austrian push to annex the territory of Lombardy. He received 2 citations, medals, which my Aunt Justine out in Oregon still has. She's 98. For bravery. He won one at Milan in Italy and the other one in Venice. And he was, till his death, he received a pension as an officer in the war, even when he lived here in Bohemia. 2 daughters were born during this period. After his discharge, he returned home and made an honest woman of his wife, Lydia. They had been married, of course, in the civil service, civil ceremony, and that marriage was not recognized by the church nor by their parents. And he married her in the Guzman Roman Catholic Church on January 19, 1860, and that's recorded in volume 17, page 54 in the church records. A son, Valentine, and another daughter arrived. rejoined the family at the end of his service, and authentic records show that the Berkowskis were master weavers as far back as 1741. Two young men from this particular area married into the family. Anton Haselbaur family were master glass craftsmen, and Joseph Clem, Rose's uncle, who were master coopers, supplying the many breweries in the area. Now, when you get anything from any country in Europe, when you're doing genealogy, they tell you that the man was either a master craftsman, a journeyman, or an apprentice. So we were happy to see that everybody were craftsmen. In the late 1870s, professional soldiers from other countries were hired to bolster Austria's standing army. They proved to be brutal and often terrorized the city streets, so it was decided that the three girls, let me get the right place here. This is my great-grandmother and grandfather, the grandfather, Anton and Lydia. This is Lydia when she was a very, very young girl. Must have been probably in the 1850s. They had the three daughters, Anna, Justine, and Antonia. It was decided that Anna, who was the oldest and had married Fred Sala and had a young daughter, Jenny, they would come to America and take care of Antonia and Justine, who were younger. Learning that Antonia had sailed for America, young Anton Haselbaur deserted from the Austrian army into which he had been forced, and with the help of relatives on both sides of the Atlantic, he arrived in New York City in his uniform. That's his uniform. He was immediately employed in the glass foundry in Greensway, Brooklyn, owned by the Haselbaurs. He and Antonia set the date for June 6, 1882, and their parents arrived for the wedding on the ship Vandalia on the May 16, 1882. The Haselbaurs ultimately did return to Czechoslovakia. No, it was Bohemia at that time, and the Berkowskis stayed here. Justine, the youngest, captured Joe Clem's heart, and they made their home in the late 1880s in Elizabeth, New Jersey, where the Berkowskis had settled. Mr. Berkowski built his many rooms and always experimented with music. My great-grandmother and the eldest daughter, Anna Stella, died in 1899. Anna had left two teenage daughters, who later became Jenny Engel, who lived across the street, and Anna von Grashek, who's somehow related, okay, of this village. Answering an ad in the Huskladdash, a Bohemian paper, for Bohemians only, the ad said. Justine and Joe Clem joined Bohemians from the Middle West in homesteading in the drained Klamath River Valley. Their 40 acres straddled the Oregon-California border, some in Malin and some in Tule Lake. I guess Tule is the Indian word for sagebrush, and if you've ever traveled in the Southwest and seen the sagebrush, I guess that's where you come from.
Yeah.
But these tules were, this sagebrush was about 15 feet high. It was in the soil that had the river bottom, nothing else grew there but the sagebrush, and the kids often got lost. During the first 12 years of their marriage, my grandmother gave birth to 7 children, and only 3 survived infancy. They were a sickly lot, anyhow. Antonia married Frank Tomei of this village. Otto married Francesca Swanda. That's Aunt Fanny, but Mr. Tomei insisted that she always signed her name Francesca on documents. And my dad, Frank, married Mary Ruth of Iceland. Grandma and the children fared poorly, so hearing about wonderful Bohemia, they rented 784th Midtown Avenue in 1894, just for the summer, but they stayed on and on. The life appealed to them, and 10 years later, their offer of $700 bought 5 acres, 2 houses, a summer kitchen, almost as large as either house, a barn larger than all, a great arbor, a shed, a giant oak that sheltered the yard, and a lot on the north full of fruit trees. 2 apple trees and 2 pear trees were given to St. John. 1 pear tree perished in the 1957. Was it fire 57 years ago? Yeah.
Once by the rectory.
Yeah, but this spring, well, my heart gloried in the heavy blooms and scent of the one left at the rectory's back door. So, in the springtime, right around St. John's. My grandfather took to home farming. The root cellar was always stocked, and he also mended shoes in the shed for the villagers, and soon joined the rest of Bohemia in the cigar factory on Ocean Avenue, as did my grandmother and Aunt Tony later. When Justine and Joe moved to the west, Mr. Verkowski sold his home in New Jersey and came to Bohemia. Here he built a simple loom and soon taught all to work it. They made rag rugs for the villagers, and Rose remembers that, and Mrs. Chella remembers that, and Satichka remembers that. Mr. Verkowski died in 1916 in the Southside Hospital and is interred in the Union Cemetery, as are my grandparents, the Haselbaur, who died within a few hours of one another on October 19, 1923. Now, if you have been looking for any data, remember that Southside Hospital had been in the town of Vavra prior to its moving to Bay Shore, and I had trouble finding his death certificate. Here's the picture of the little house, about 1909, I think, and you can see the shadow of the summer kitchen and the great arbor, and there's Uncle Otto, Mr. Verkowski. Oh, they always called him Mr. Verkowski, even his wife called him Mr. My dad, my grandma, my grandfather, and Aunt Tony. What I have next. Oh, this is the original deed to the house. It was bought from Joseph Zinsky, who was a guardian of a little girl. And this is when my mother and father took the house over in 1923. They had the Long Island Lighting Company install the lighting. And this was the 1923 tax receipt for my grandfather. He had given 1 acre to Uncle Otto, and so he had 4 acres left, the 2 houses. The other house was on Walnut Avenue. That's where the Koshatskas lived. Remember the Koshatka family? Okay, and his taxes were $10.30. And $2.50 were school tax at that time. And in 1927, when my father took it over, he had sold the lot next door with the fruit trees to the Koshatskas' son. So he only had 3/4 of an acre, and his taxes were $20.86 with a dollar for a penalty because he was late in paying his taxes. Here's all the history of Joe Clem buying his property out in Oregon. He was number 148, Joseph Clem, 40 acres. And they had a miserable time, but that's another story. This is Aunt Tony and Uncle Frank, and here's the wedding, the invitation to open house on their 60th wedding anniversary. There are their 3 children, Joe, Frankie, and Blanche, all passed on. This is their 50th wedding anniversary. There's Aunt Fanny and Uncle Otto. See Aunt Fanny showing her wedding ring. That's their wedding picture. And here's Uncle Otto, Edwin, and Carolyn. Carolyn, or Sadlichka, was always called our Haselbaur princess. This is my mother and dad in 1921. Of course, I came along in 22, so it better be 21. And this is my favorite picture of all. This is Ed and I at Pepperidge Hall, and I'm about 3 or 4 there, and Ed always took care of me. He was my big brother. Papa was a very slight build and always exercising with Uncle Otto. They used to stand on their heads and use the mats out in the barn. At 3 years, they never grew. They were always short. I don't think Dad was any taller than I. At 3 years of age, he was declared legally blind and fitted with head-less slabs. That was in 1897, and he always felt badly about his slabs. The kids made a lot of fun of them. He played the violin sweetly. He played ragtime on the piano and real low-down blues on his harmonicas, and I still have them. He could do the soft shoe and tap dance. I'm sorry, I never wanted to learn. He had completed only 2 years of high school and used to be pleased when my history teacher, Joe Brucci, was asked to be remembered to him. So they had attended school together, and when my father went to enlist in the Army for World War I, he went with Joe, and they turned my dad down. He worked in Gerber's department store in Salem until the 1929 crash, then did odd jobs, and finally worked on WPA, keeping the tally of cards through state and country roads. So money were being allocated even at that time for plans for the Sunrise Highway, and finally it reached Bohemia in 1951. He and Uncle Otto danced the best it up with a group in the 20s, and he passed on his costume to one of the Stetter boys. He organized a drum and bugle group at the St. John's at that time for teenage boys, and in the 50s for the Brentwood and East Brentwood Fire Department. When he was 10, he was hired to be a shepherd on the Bourne Estate, now LaSalle Military Academy. And all of these states that were along the Great South Bay, of course, had many hundreds of acres to each, and their taxes were high, but if they had a certain number of animals on them, they could be declared farmland, and their taxes went down. He walked to and from work every day on the Oakdale Bohemia Road. Well, this was when there was no school, of course. On arrival one day, he found great commotion, and for three or four sheep had gotten lost. The hired hand searched and found all but one. That night, Dad was late in getting home, and night came on quickly by the time he had reached the Oakdale station. No lights, no moon, and at 11 or 12 years of age, well, he was scared. The first house would be at the Loiza's on Locust Avenue. That was Aunt Louise and Uncle Frank Schwander on Locust Avenue, and he used to cut their wood over through to Arthur's back door. Something was following, and turning he saw a white apparition nearing him, only to realize after a few terrorized moments that the thing was blah-blah, and that it was the Lord Jesus. My parents were wed in 1921 in St. Mary's, and I arrived, St. Mary's Church in East Islip, I should say. I arrived in 1922. They had purchased the first Bohemia schoolhouse from Cyril Chabanka. My mom, dad, and Mason and Pete Proctor had put in the foundation on their lot on the southeast corner of Carshick and Smithtown. To their dismay, in moving the house, the flooring fell out, showing rotted cross beams below. While the situation was being remedied, my parents worked clearing the lot, and Mama lost her emerald ring while meaning never to find it. So we don't know if the emerald ring is still there or not. My throat's beginning to go, I'm sorry. Mama worked for Mr. Cook for the development of the Sable Golf Course. The little realty office and a model bungalow were on Lakeland Avenue, and each a.m. we walked through the scrub oaks to Lakeland. I was allowed to take a toy, a doll, or paper dolls, some quiet toy. When time passed and I became restless, lonesome for home, I guess the best word to describe that is the Bohemian word vitosniek. I don't know if anybody knows what that means, but it's all of those things mixed together. I would look out the west window and see our oak tree at the town avenue. That was from Lakeland Avenue, and feel comforted. Bobby and Betty Rifle lived to the north of us, that's on the corner of 7th Street and Midtown, just about across the way from Roses. And each morning I would run over and help them feed the chickens and pick up the eggs. And they had the water supply was outside. We pumped water. And I saw by their tombstone that they died in 1925, so I must have been 3 years old. Ed and I were always together. I guess I just tagged along after him. I was the father. But we got along well, and we stood in the back of our hedge each day. We weren't allowed to go out into the road, and visited for the peddlers to go by. The iceman gave us a piece of ice, Butchers gave us a piece of bologna, bakers, dry goods men. Mr. Eccleston was a tree blowing his bugle and shouting fresh fish. And the little peanut man. Does anybody remember the peanut man?
You remember?
No? Nobody remember the peanut man? He had the little ring in his ear, and he had a little pony. No?
No.
He came from Bayshore? No, okay. And we collected tinfoil and sold it to the junkmen. And what a treat when they tarred the roads, and the short piece of fresh tar was as good as 2 of them. We used to feel that. We waited for the kids to come home from school. The poor boys, the Milford. You remember the Milford? Yes. Freddie Schwab, Mikey Magnuson, Willie and Harry King, and the Rifle boys often visited their grandparents after school. The boys were throwing stones one day at one another, and it cut my lip and chin open. I was about 4, I guess. Louis Rifle was just about to pick up his boys when he saw the Kulu, and he turned around and picked up Mrs. Root. She was the only RN. This is another RN in the village. So she sewed up the gas while Louie and my father helped me. When the first radio came, the Victrola went out to the barn. The radio was an oblong box with a round speaker sitting on the top. Ed and I had the Victrola to ourselves, and Ed learned every word of the Crusoe records that we had out in the barn, and the John McCormick records. And I just barely remember some of them. On clear nights, our dads took us out to the field and pointed out the different constellations with a flashlight. In the gullies just about where Lakeland and Sunrise meet, we used to sift the sand for small arrowheads that the Indians used for birds and small animals. We helped Dudley add to her collection of pressed flowers and leaves. It was a good childhood, and there was always something to do. I don't think we were ever bored. Every other week or so, the pinochle gang came to our house. That was Frankie Stochl, Mr. Shemenka, Foxy Lizhenska, and Johnny Bumsot. Does anybody remember Johnny Bumsot? Now lived in the Reichel house, and he was almost over almost every evening. He had lost the use of his lower limbs due to a bout with the dreaded polio just when FDR had lost his use of his limbs. Some nights we did homework for the Valentine factory from Bay Shore, counting and inserting Christmas tags and seals in the small cellophane envelopes. Each supper time, the airwaves were filled with children's programs. The Singing Lady, Uncle Don, Ovaltine's Little Orphan Annie,